It's funny how I'm realizing it and hearing it. Even though I don't think I've ever actually preached from this text before, I'm familiar with the story, but I can really see how just getting it the way you just received it, it could be quite confusing. So let me just tell the story. Remember, it's interesting, very interesting, that in terms of the Easter season that we're in, Easter wasn't that long ago, 5 weeks. Just before Easter Sunday, Peter, star of our story here, was denying that Jesus even existed, that he was his friend. Peter betrayed Jesus in that courtyard when all the crucifixion and trials was going on. And then, so that was about 6 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, Peter's out fishing. Easter's happened, resurrection's happened. What's Peter doing? I'm doing what's familiar. I'm going fishing. And that's when we shared the story about the first breakfast, when Jesus appeared and cooked some fish and told them some stories and told them where they could put their net. And Peter did that, and all this great abundance came up. So there's a story of Peter not only trusting, but in that exchange, Jesus asks Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" Peter says 3 times, "Yes, I do." And in that exchange of love and "yes, I do," those 3 betrayals that happened in the courtyard were forgiven. So Peter's relationship with Jesus is restored. Now, here we are in the book of Acts, and Peter is on the road. Peter's out there telling the story and being a source of healing and teaching and information for people. And in the midst of all that, he has this vision of all these animals in the sky being laid out in front of him and being invited by this voice to eat these things which his culture has told him not to eat for quite a long time. I cannot do that. Oh, yes, you can. I can't? Oh, yes, you can. Go ahead and eat that. Troubling message, even in the affirmation of it. Your whole cultural upbringing tells you you can't do something, and now this voice tells you you can. What would you make of that if that happened to you? So just to reinforce what's going on here for Peter, just at that time, 3 people for whom this problem, this dietary law, is not a part of their culture, comes to him. Because they've had a vision that they should come for healing. They should come to Peter, this Jew, these Gentiles. In fact, this Roman soldier and his friends get this message that they should go to the ones that they've been persecuting. This one in particular for a healing. We're crossing boundaries all the time. Immigration's going crazy right now. Cultural centuries of information and practices are out the window at this moment. So the soldiers come, the Romans come to Peter asking for prayer. What's Peter to do? He only has to start their prayer, and all of a sudden the same spirit that he and the others experienced at Pentecost and being with Jesus is now coming upon these foreigners, these strangers, these persecutors. What is he to do? And this memory comes. This memory comes to Peter. He's out there with his life and his experience of Jesus and the teachings from Jesus. This memory comes of this word. John baptized with water. You will be baptized with the Holy Spirit. So I ask you, now when he's talking at this point, he's talking back to the headquarters. He's back in Jerusalem with the council, those who were the official, as far as they could be official that early in the game of the early Christian church. These were the people who were the council, included people like James, the brother of Jesus, significant people. That's who he's talking to, who are saying, you cannot do that, what you're doing. Why are you talking? Why are you eating with people? Why are you eating that food which you know is forbidden? How can you be doing all those things? And he says, you know, it wasn't me. It was Spirit. It was God. It was the Holy. The same thing that's bigger than any one of us here was upon these people. How could I object to God? And if you look there at the very bottom of that reading, here's the church council. Imagine yourself at a church council meeting. Hearing it all laid out like that, they quieted down. And as it sank in, they started not condemning Peter, praising God. And in that praise, there's a whole lot of letting go going on. All those dietary laws and who I can eat with and who I can't eat with, that's all having to be let go of. God has broken through to the other nations with this story of life. So in this moment, remember Joseph Campbell, this wonderful series of his? He said the same thing of Jesus and Buddha, that Jesus took Judaism, all the wonderful wisdom within Judaism, and just let go of those things which were culturally determinate for Judaism, but took the same message and universalized it. Same thing that Buddha did with Hinduism. Here's a lot of cultural stuff and wisdom. Let's let go of the cultural things and just universalize it. That's what's happening here in this moment with this story. Okay, so you got the story now? A little bit better? Okay. What's it mean for us today? I wondered. What's it mean for us as a nation? What does it mean for you as a congregation? What does it mean for me as an individual? In thinking about this story, I remembered a good friend of mine, Jim Rendy. Jim Rendy, we went to college together in Germany. And he and his wife came from the Bay Area, from San Francisco, and it was time for me to return back to the States, having lived overseas for 5 years, and they lived in San Francisco. I'd always wanted to live in San Francisco, so I said, can I stay with you? And I did. That's where I first lived, in San Francisco, when I came here in 72, 73. 26th Avenue, right off Geary Avenue in San Francisco. That's where I lived. And we went different directions, went on our own course of our own life. And so then fast forward to 2010, almost 25, 30 years later, I'm serving a church up in Murphys, California. There's a sustainability organization. They're going to do an event in our congregation. And I look who the speaker is who I'm going to call and talk about making arrangements, and it's Jim Rendy. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be funny if it was the same person? So I called up on the phone, and this person had a really deep voice. Well, no, that's not Jim. So just a coincidence. So then we make our arrangements, and it's time for the meeting, and the person walks up the sidewalk, and it's Jim Rendy with a cold. Jim, Alan. And we got to talking after his great presentation. He's become an architect and doing a lot of sustainability things with his architecture. And I learned that he's become a member of First Baptist Church. Jim, how could you do such a thing? Over in Sonora. You know, all my stereotypes are just flying up can't talk to them. Can't talk to the fundamentalists. But it's Jim. And Jim tells me this wonderful story of his congregation that he was a part of. There was this big biker guy, big beard, long hair, just mean and tough looking. And he's scared, Jim. He's there in the sanctuary. Look around here. Anybody look scary to you here this morning? Don't look too long. Right? Come back, look at me. But what Jim did, he went up to this guy after the worship service and said, "You scare me. Tell me your story." And the fear went away because he knew the man's story. And in that storytelling, here's all the places of congruence and similarity and life stuff that they shared together. Here was the differences, biker, architect, all those differences. But here's the similarity because the story was shared, because the story was told. That's what brought the Roman soldiers and Peter together. I've got a heartbreak going on in my life, and I've heard that you can help me. You've been persecuting me and all my people, but you've come in a dream, like I just had a dream, that I can help you. Let's sit down together and tell each other our stories. Karen Georgia Thompson is the Minister for Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations in the national offices of the UCC, and she writes of this passage, "What do our worship communities look like? And who do we extend hospitality to in our homes? Are we willing to be transformed, changed in ways that name our lives, both lacking where they are lacking and where we exclude others, and where they're expansive and where we invite others? We could use more people in our churches and more diversity in our relationships and in our lives. Are we willing to receive that transformation in our lives, that we could listen to somebody who looks different, acts different, is different, and yet in their story we're going to find a wider expansion of love and compassion in our world? Are we resting on rituals and relationships that we hold as sacred cows that have transfixed us into static rather than dynamic realities of transformation that promises to make our lives so much richer? What is significant about this passage is that the Holy One, the Song of the Universe, God, is doing something new. Is doing something new that's shaking up all the rituals and the creeds, which are so important. It's so interesting for me to be sharing this with you this morning. Last night I was a guest with Betsy at the Passover here with Shir Shalom. Those memories of those rituals are there as their identity to remind themselves of a time when they were freed from slavery. And the question that Rabbi Steve asked last night, what do we need to be freed from at this point in time? It's an ongoing, dynamic question. We know who we are by remembering these rituals, but we can expand these rituals. We can include new people in these rituals. We can ask those questions of today. So it's not that patterns or rituals are not important. It's just how permeable they are. And how do we invite new ones in? And who do we exclude unknowing by the rituals that we follow? Excuse me. Change is hard. But how ironic, you would think that after the event of the resurrection of Jesus, we would expect to be surprised. We would expect to have our normal expectations challenged and blown away. Look what just happened. Look what's happening. To be more willing to see that some old ways of thinking need to be released because God is doing a new thing. You would think that the church council would have on its agenda a whole lot more under new business than old business. But change is hard. But the new business that was coming to them, the church council in Jerusalem, through Peter's experience, was the Spirit doesn't seem to have read our bylaws. There are no unclean people. There are no unclean people. You can eat with whomever you want to. It's what's inside a person that makes them holy or not. A lot of us us are learning about Prince for the first time. I knew about Prince, but honestly, I didn't listen to his music. Why? Because I thought he looked strange. Truth, I thought he looked strange. I'm an acoustic guy, but now I'm listening to his music, wow, this guy can make you want to dance. But I kind of shut him out. I did shut him out. And now I'm hearing these stories, and maybe you're hearing them too, that besides for this amazing musician, he was an amazing humanitarian. I heard a story about Van Jones, who was in the Obama administration for a short while, advocating for an environmental agenda. When he was sacked, kicked out of the White House, he went to Prince, his good buddy. And Prince told him to go to Jerusalem and pray for 2 weeks. And when during that prayer time, everything you want, everything that comes to you as vision, write it all down, come and tell me about it and we'll make it real. Prince and Van Jones went on a tour, Baltimore, Detroit, Oakland. It looked like just another tour that they were doing, but they were raising money for these organizations in those communities that Van Jones had identified. Same story. We're in the same story, Prince and us. And I didn't know it. Because I thought he looked weird. Mary Donovan Turner, professor at Pacific School of Religion, has this to say about this passage. Does including the new or different mean that we are letting go of the values that we have always defined us? Or do the values that define us compel us to be more inclusive and more open? Do the values that compel us invite us to be more open? God is full of surprises. In the next 2 weeks, you're going to be learning more about the person who the search committee has invited to be your minister. And as I said a few weeks ago, in my mind, how to say this, I don't want to put a judgment on it. I think it's most spirit-guided when this person is not where you are now. This person is 3, 5 years ahead of you, with a deep compassion and caring for who you are now, but also the vision that's going to take you to some place that's going to not seem a little strange, perhaps. I don't know. But if you didn't hire somebody to take you somewhere new, just don't even hire anybody. You all are pretty great as you are, you know. But there's a calling into something new that Spirit and search committee who's intimately connected with your visions and your hopes and your needs, that's about to come into your life. So I invite you to think of this story as something that's just going to open up your embrace a little bit. Just open up your embrace a little bit. You still got to have an embrace. You still have your values and your patterns and the things that you love. It's not blowing everything out of the water. You still have an embrace, but just how much wider can you open it? As you receive that person's and you dialogue with that person. And one more thing about this, that this last line of the church leaders in Jerusalem, where they got it. When Peter had his vision and his experience, he didn't go off and start his own thing. He didn't start, no, wow, I've got it. I've got the Spirit. I'm going to start my own first Church of Peter. He went back to the council. They did have authority. They did hold the history of the tradition. And because he went back and shared his story, they were changed. They were expanded. If he had gone off and done his own thing, that might have been fun, but they would have stayed the same. He came back and told their story, his experience, and they opened up. So it's not that counsel is bad. It's not that bylaws are bad. They just need to be permeable in a way that holds what is dear, but helps us find out what is most dear so that we're able to open up our arms to a new experience. And let me close with these words in the current edition of Christian Century. It's so fun, it just came in the mail yesterday and it was like, yes, says the same thing I was saying, must be good. This is from Stephanie Paulson. We need places to pray as if someone were listening. We need places to study as if we might learn something worth writing on our hearts. We need places to stay to join with others in service as if the world might be transformed. Churches are places to learn to practice with others a continual conversion of life and a permanent openness to change. Let the people say, Amen.